Hello, hello, everybody. How are we today? I hope everybody is doing well. I am going to just give everybody a minute while I go ahead and post. I apologize that there was no real heads up, um, even though I normally um, give you guys at least a little bit of a heads up. It has been just a week. That's really all I have to say. Um, it's been super busy this week, and it's been a lot. Um, so I apologize. Um, I also apologize for if I am scatterbrained at all during the live. Like I said, I almost wasn't going to come on today, and it I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but I haven't really been able to sleep very well. Um, I have been waking up in the morning and struggling to wake up. Um, so yeah. All right. I shared everything on Facebook, so everybody should know. Yes. And um, I am I don't know if it's partial or just partial on top of everything that I still have had to do recently. But I am definitely exhausted with life. Um, but who wants me to just shut up and get on with day 4? I am loading up the video right now. Hopefully it saved our spot. YouTube has been notorious this past week for not actually giving me like the point where I stopped on videos. Um and I'm not entirely sure why it's done it to me. Um Under this profile and under my normal, average, everyday profile. So do not be surprised if I have to try to find where we were again. But without further ado, let's jump back into day 4.
Too fast, Trevor, too fast!
I know what I'm doing, Mom.
Ah, a new driver.
Yeah, I'm a little freaked out.
If there's one thing to freak out about,
Didn't I call it? I don't know what's going on with YouTube. It absolutely despises me. So I apologize.
Jurors back in?
No, Judge, we should go get our witness.
All right. I go ahead and round them up. I got some that I have some that Frazier gave me on Monday. Well, they didn't say she was going to be in the gazebo. Hey, we ready to proceed? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. And your last name is Podolsky?
Halowski.
Pulowski, I'm sorry. My name is John Luke Weaver, and I, along with Michael Ray, represent Melly in this case. So I want to talk about some things, kind of going back and, we're going to go ahead and talk about the guns. Leave that up now, because I'm going to ask you to switch it over to the Elmo. So earlier you stated, so there was, you believe you saw a revolver.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to take this mouse, this purplish magenta mouse, and you tell me where to stop. Which one you think you saw?
It was either that one or the one with the brown.
This one or this one or this one?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't remember the colors.
Okay. But not this one.
No. No.
Okay, so longer muzzle, not the shorter muzzle, not a snub nose.
From what I can remember.
Right, and that's all I'm asking, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Now, Judge, if we can switch over.
Okay. I'm pausing it for just a second so that I can, because I totally forgot that we are writing down what everybody feels the guns look like. So let me find my page here. My husband was rummaging through my notebook. Because he needed a piece of paper. So now I gotta find where I was using the notebook. And I apologize if anybody ends up hearing the dogs barking. There has been a lot of like fighting and stuff outside. Um, some dude was going up and down, um, screaming about how he pays for them to keep his street clean or something like that. I don't know. And he was dragging a garbage can behind him while screaming for like 20 minutes. And then right before I went live, um, somebody sat here and stated and was just like screaming bloody murder. Um, so let me write down this note. Stated when asked by defense which gun Jenna said J. Barron's 2 or J. Barron's. I am just writing down what the gun in J. Ferris 1 looks like. Because for those of you who need a recap on so far what the guns look like, Chris Ferris was not shown these 3 pictures, but he stated initially that it was a longer barrel revolver, and then when specifically asked, he stated that it was shiny metallic and short nose. And then when Jenna Ferris was asked originally by the prosecution before lunch, she stated that it was curved, shorter, silver, and cowboy style. Then, when shown the photo reference by the prosecution, she pointed out J. Ferris 2 for sure as being the gun, which is a dark silver with brown handle and a longer nose. So I'm trying to use this to point out the very many inconsistencies between all of these guns and who said they saw what, and the fact that nobody can pin down an exact estimate of what this gun looked like. So I'm just writing down the description of J. Ferris 1. Light silver, long nose, black handle. And if I remember correctly, when Scott Ferris is asked about the gun, he specifically says that it was um this gun right here. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. I may have it off. Okay, so yeah, you guys can see my cursor. If I remember correctly, Scott was also shown these videos, and he says that it was this one. So J. Ferris 3. if I remember correctly. So, yeah. Um, but you guys will end up seeing once we start back into this. So I'm going to mute myself again, and I am going to um jump back into the video.
To the element. Thank you, Judge. Can you show me where the button is? I'll come up there and do it.
I'm trying to get a button installed down there. That's part of the source of my frustration.
Okay. Let's see, back up here. Wrong way. All right, so this is a report in the state. You've stipulated to the admissibility of this report?
Yes, no objection, Judge.
So I would ask to admit this as Jenna 1.
All right, that's it.
You went to the district attorney's office on August the 27th, so a little more than a month ago, yes? Of this year?
Is this the virtual meeting?
I don't know. Was it a virtual meeting? This is a report regarding you talking to the DA's office about this gun.
I don't. Is this,
Well, I'm not
was
saying
this
that
the, was this the phone call that I had to come here?
I'm not, ma'am,
I don't know what you're asking.
I'm just going to read the report. Okay, it says on August the 27th, 2024, at approximately 14:48 hours, I requested to attend a Zoom meeting with Jenna Pileski. Present for the meeting was ADA Megan Frankish and DCA DA Jeffrey Fogus. Ms. Pileski is the ex-wife. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Ms. Pileski is the ex-wife of Christopher Farris, the son of Gary and Melody Farris. During the course of the meeting, Ms. Pileski advised of the time when the defendant showed her a gun, specifically a revolver. Once when she was at the home of for either Father's Day or Gary's birthday, both having just occurred in June, the month before Gary's death. She never handled the weapon, and it was merely a
Okay, so the reason why I'm pausing this is because if you see here, it says the following photos were shown to her. Revolver 1 is a Google photo. Revolver 2 is a Google photo. And then it says something about SC underscore 0285 is a gun collected from the Ferris household. So J Ferris 1 and J Ferris 2 are actual photographs from Google. And J Ferris 3 is the one that is collected from the actual household. So I am writing this down. So to me, this almost seems like, you know how in medicine trials, like the double blind studies where they'll give one person the medication and then they'll give another person a placebo. And then some people in that placebo category then comes up with what's called the placebo effect, where um, when they are feeling better, and they feel like the medication that they had gotten must be the real medicine. Um, that is what they call the placebo effect. And I almost feel like this is one of those things where it is the placebo effect. So Okay. So, like I said, I just wanted to stop for a second so that um I could use that for future arguments to show that these people seriously did not know what they were talking about and that they were very much not credible witnesses. Um even from the start of this, because again, originally the only person who admitted to seeing this mysterious gun right off the bat was Scott Farris. The day that his father was found on the 5th of July, one of the very first things that he had mentioned was that there was some random gun that he had found. And if I remember correctly, he states that he told his brother about it. Um, but nobody had actually seen the gun at that point besides Scott. Um, and then magically, Chris knows about this gun and he has seen this gun and um they were um I'm trying to think. I lost my track of mind, but that's okay. But basically, like, Chris and Jenna initially were said by Scott to have not actually seen these. And then magically, Scott and Jenna come up and say what they supposedly saw. And neither one of them can give an actual accurate description of this gun. And it's really funny that Jenna's testimony comes before Scott's, and Jenna is shown this, where it specifically states that the third gun is the one that is actually collected from the Ferris household, and I'm pretty sure that that third gun, I'm if I remember correctly, and again, I could be wrong, even with an eidetic memory, um, my memory can be faulty at times because only certain things get stored into long-term memory. Um, even with an eidetic memory. Um, and so I pretty much remember though that Scott pointed to this third gun and I specifically remember him being shown this series of photos, but I could very well be wrong and he could have just described that gun. But the point of that comment is I wonder if at that point then that Jenna or Chris or both had talked to Scott after Jenna's testimony and talked about this exact piece of paper and how her and Chris may have gotten it wrong and they need Scott to get it right. It just seems very suspicious. Because again, I specifically told you that they all came up with different comments about this gun, and even Chris and Jenna's testimony cannot be the same, isn't the same. Every time they're asked, they're giving, not given, they're giving a slightly different description of this gun each and every time. Again, and you can, if you want to check out Chris's testimony, you can go to Long Crimes video on day 4, which is linked in the description, and you can go to 2 hours and 37 minutes, and that will take you to Chris's testimony about the gun. And if you listen to him, he specifically says the first time that he is asked that it is a longer barrel revolver. And then when asked again to explain in more detail what it looks like, he states that it is a shiny metallic and short nose. Even those two descriptions are significantly different. And then when Jenna is asked by the prosecution, she told them curved, shorter, silver, and cowboy style. because she specifically stated that she didn't know the name of the type of gun, but she would kind of know it if they described it. And so they described it as a cowboy style. Um, and then for the photo reference, when she was shown all three photos before lunch by the prosecution, she chose J. Ferris 2, and she stated that she was positive that that was the gun that she saw. And that gun is a dark silver brown handle, and it is a longer nose. And then when she was asked by the defense about the gun, Jenna then said it was J. Ferris 2 or J. Ferris 1. J. Ferris 1 is light silver, long nose, and a black handle. So we have had Jenna describing this gun 3 separate times. And each time she has given a different description of this gun. So yes. And I love that in this, they specifically show that they are full of shit. Back to the video.
A quick glance of the weapon when they were in the basement for other reasons. So is that a true statement?
Right. So
Okay.
this was the Zoom meeting that I had with them.
Okay. And it says then the following 3 photos were shown to her. And of the 3 weapons shown, and without certainty, she identified the black metal and wood-handled revolver as the one that looked most similar to the gun Melody showed her in the basement.
Okay.
Okay? And then you noted that there was where the gun was located in the basement, which I believe there was a picture of earlier.
A picture of...
Where you think you found, where you were when you saw.
Okay, so for anyone who wants to take just a second to take a look at this, so it says, of the 3 weapons shown, and without certainty, she identified the black metal and wood-handled revolver as the one that looked most similar to the gun Melody showed her in the basement. ADA note: the state asked Miss Pulowski where the gun was located in the basement, and Miss Pulowski described a piece of furniture to the left of the basement stairs as you walk down the stairs towards the basement. This piece of furniture was located immediately by the entrance of the bar in the basement next to the basement stairs. She described Melody Ferris as opening one of the drawers in that piece of furniture and the gun laying in the drawer. Okay, so I mean, this just, I don't know. It seems very odd to me. Because while again, she was able to identify without an issue this black metal and wood handled revolver, when asked by the prosecution, okay, yet she, when asked by the defense, isn't sure and says it's either J. Ferris 1 or J. Ferris 2, but both are still significantly different looking guns. Is it darker or is it lighter metal? Like, even I remember what my beautiful Smith & Wesson 38 Special Airweight was. It was very much like J. Ferris 3, where it was a shorter barrel. It was light silver and a beautiful black hammer, or a black handle, and it was hammerless. Oh, I absolutely love that gun. Like, it was sheer perfection. And I haven't seen this gun since I sold it in 2011 when I was pregnant with my oldest child. So it's been over 10 years since I have seen my gun. And I only had my gun from 2007 to 2011. So I only had it a couple years. And I didn't take it out very often unless I was going shooting. So I saw it maybe 8 to 12 times a year, and it wasn't guaranteed that it was even that much. Because a good portion of that time I was working, and in 2009 I had my gun with me in Arkansas, but I didn't have anywhere to shoot in Arkansas. So from 2009 to 2011, my gun truly did not really leave its case at all. So yeah, I basically looked at my gun maybe 24 times in the course of that whole time period. So it wasn't like I regularly saw my gun. And I still remember what it looks like. Now I get it. I have an eidetic memory. Um, and so of course I'm more likely to retain what things like that would look like. But come on, if you're going to go and tell and like insert yourself into a criminal investigation, the least that you can do is make sure that the shit that you're giving them is accurate. Like, that's just my opinion. If you're not 100% sure, then stay the fuck out of it because you most likely are lying anyway. Is kind of how I see it. Like, to go back 6 years later, directly before the trial, and be like, oh, hey, I saw this gun. Like, no. You're just doing too much at that point.
Saw the gun.
In the basement.
In the basement. All right. So, do you find it interesting that you never told anybody about a gun in the basement?
Nobody ever called me.
Nobody ever called you on this case? You never were interviewed?
I was interviewed shortly after.
Sure.
At that time, it was a week after this had happened, and my main focus was taking care of those girls and making sure they were okay and going into good wife mode and being there for my husband at the time. I really didn't think about anything else other than
I wasn't talked to about this. Oh, well, I was talked to about this, but I was too busy being a good wife to talk about what I had seen. And I didn't feel it was prudent to reach out to police when it was a better time for me to tell them about this. I decided to do this right before the court hearing 6 years later. Oh, sorry. I was interpreting what she was actually saying. I don't like the whole sugarcoating and beating around the bush thing. So yeah, I put it into neurodivergent.
protecting them and being there for them.
All right, so you were interviewed. You remember that?
Over the phone.
Over the phone. Do you remember anything about that interview?
We talked about where Chris and I and Addie ate dinner.
Okay. Do you remember telling them in that interview that you slept with Addie that night and that Chris slept by himself?
Yes.
Okay. Do you also remember in that interview telling the police that you and Addie met Chris out at the Peachtree Road Race? He texted you.
No, I don't remember those details.
All right. Your Honor, I've got to play the recording, if that's okay with you. We don't have a transcript of it that I know of.
Is testimony she doesn't remember?
That's what she testified to. She doesn't remember. Your Honor, at this time I would admit, how long is the video, Michael? Or the recording?
The whole audio recording is 20 minutes.
And I think it would be best to play the whole recording.
No. Not to refresh her recollection of, how much you wanted to ask her.
You got the timestamp on it, Michael?
For the road race, you're probably looking at.
Why don't you ask her all the other questions you want to ask her about the interview and see if she remembers any of that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So you don't remember that you told the investigator in that case that he was out at the road race and you and Addie met him out at the road race?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. But you do remember that she slept with you that night?
I do. Mm-hmm.
All right. And but in that interview, you also stated that he couldn't have left. How would you know?
How would I know if he left or not?
Right.
Our house?
Yes.
I would hear
Yes,
him.
ma'am.
I would
When you
hear
were asleep?
him. With Addie, I didn't sleep very much. So, yeah, I probably would have heard him.
Probably.
Yes, the way that our door shut at the time, the condo that we lived in, I would have definitely heard. He's a big guy. He's 6'4". When he would walk around, I could hear him.
And
Now, I'm honestly not going to dispute that because my ex was 6'6" and 100 and we'll say 75 pounds at like one point. That seemed to be like his average was between like 160 and 175. And you always knew when he was coming in. There was no such thing as gently shutting the door. It was always a slam. Um, you know, because of his big ass feet. He wore a size 13 shoe, and yeah, um, you always heard it, even if he was trying to be like quiet. And then it always sounded like he was stomping up the stairs, even if he wasn't. So, you would hear, but would you hear him while you were sleeping is the question. My ex would definitely be able to come in a lot of times without me noticing while I was sleeping. And I guess it could be because I was a young mom at the time. Our oldest was roughly like 4. Our oldest, I should say, was between like 4 and 7. And our youngest was newborn to 2 while I was with my ex. And so yeah, I slept through almost every time he did come in the house at night because I was tired. I was sleeping. I could hear the kids, but I would totally miss my ex coming in.
And in that interview, I think you concluded the interview with something to the effect of, "Can I get off the phone now?" Do you remember saying that?
Probably, yeah. I remember.
Why is that?
Because this is stressful. This is extremely overwhelming and scary and awful.
You're no longer married to Chris, correct?
Correct.
When did you divorce?
We separated in April of 2021, and the divorce was finalized in December of 2021.
Okay. Was that because he was having addiction issues?
It was for several reasons.
And what were those reasons?
What does that have to do with this?
Well, ma'am, you have to answer the question.
Okay. We divorced. We were together for 13 years, married for 6, and he did have addiction issues. However, that was not the main reason. We had financial issues. We had to move out of our house. There was a lot of emotional damage done by April, and therefore I felt like that wasn't what I wanted to be a part of.
Okay. Again, I stated that I don't like this whole beating around the bush thing, so let's put this back into neurodivergent, okay? Yes, the substance abuse issues were a big problem, but the biggest issue was the financial problems. I did not want to be a part of a broke ass family because I am a gold digger. Oh, was that too blunt? I apologize. That's seriously what this sounds like. Like, I understand that there was, emotional damage because you are with somebody who is an addict, who has substance abuse problems. I hate to tell you, there is always going to be emotional damage when you are with somebody like that. Again, I know from firsthand experience, my ex used to steal my gabapentin. Um, and so, yeah. Um, and that was just one of the many meds that my ex would steal of mine. And he would go and he would swap them for like Adderall and other drugs. So yeah, I totally understand what it is like to care about somebody with substance abuse issues. My ex went out drinking on a fairly regular basis. He came from a long line of alcoholics. My father, I don't want to call him my father-in-law, because I was never married to my ex. My ex's dad, um, would spend every single day from the time he got off of work at the bar. There was one bar that he would always frequent, and then there were a couple like restaurant bar places that, he would go and get some food and another drink and then go back to his bar of choice. And my ex's mom, she was also a big drinker. Um, I specifically remember at my daughter's first birthday, she had gotten so drunk, um, that she started a big, huge fight, and my stepdad had to step in and stop this woman from getting in my face. Um, and so, yeah, and then like her boyfriend was such a big drinker that there was one night I hadn't even said anything to this dude. And he just came down in the basement at my ex's mom's where we were living, and he just came and got into my face. And my ex's mom had to sit here and, you know, get him to stop. But like those types of situations, they're not safe. They're not okay to put anybody in, let alone a mom with a toddler, and it was bad. It was a bad situation all the way around. And I empathize. I don't sympathize with Jenna because I feel like to some extent she kind of made her bed by being a gold digger. But, like if you're going to stay because the family has money, is that a reason to stay? Because the funny thing is she put up with this addiction for 13 years ultimately. And then she only is not okay with it when they start having financial problems.
marriage. I didn't think that's what marriage was, and I decided that I needed to step away and do what's best for me.
Did you struggle with any substance abuse issues?
No.
Can we switch back over to the other? I learned a lesson. Trying to get to a picture of the basement. So this bar, you're saying this piece of this furniture right here is where you saw the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you see the gun above the door here?
Yes.
So you're talking about a historic gun that was Miss Walker's or Mr. Walker's gun, grandfather, her father, Chris's grandfather's gun, correct? That's the story you told.
Yes. I mean, you're saying that I'm talking about that gun?
Yes, ma'am, I am. That is
No.
a historic gun owned by Mr. Walker.
I've never noticed it, and I don't know. Don't know it.
So, don't you find it unusual that you didn't bring this story up to anybody for 6 years until August of 2024?
No, because when I divorced my husband, my ex-husband, no one had contacted me about any of this, and I didn't think that my role was important in anything.
Did Chris ever promise you any money? Of course, if Melody gets convicted, then he would stand to inherit quite a lot of money. That you would get a lot of money.
No.
Okay. Did Chris ever tell you that he saw a revolver at his parents' house in 2011, 2012?
Not that I remember, no.
And that it was a silver revolver?
No.
A snub-nosed revolver?
I don't know what that,
With a white handle?
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Are you aware that Scott Farris says he found a revolver in this drawer
No.
that looks nothing like any of the revolvers that you've described?
Okay.
Even the defense is pointing out that so far, all three descriptions of this revolver are different, and we haven't even gotten to Chris's testimony yet. Or not Chris's testimony, Scott's testimony. I apologize. I did write down the white handle part because I had caught a part of Chris's testimony, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. So yes, and I just realized closed captioning was off, so I apologize. But yes, so he said it was a shiny metallic, white handle, and short. In one of his comments about the revolver, and then in another one, he said it was a long barrel revolver. And all of that testimony again starts in the Long Crime Day 4 video. If you go to the description in the link at 2 hours and 37 minutes starts Chris's testimony on the revolver.
Your Honor, would this be an appropriate time to play the brief snippet?
Hey, y'all want to handle it? Y'all want to send the jury out and do that?
It won't take,
All right. All right, y'all step out. I know we have a couple of jurors who are trying to get their steps in, but when we're doing stuff in the courtroom while they're back there, they need to stay in the jury room, not the hallway. All right? What?
If you'll just hit to turn this mic on, I'll spin it on that time.
Do what? No, I mean, it needs to
can
go.
we just there's got to be a USB input that we can put it in.
Oh, if you just want, yeah, there's a HDMI cable that you can access, and I can switch it to Mr. Ray's laptop. Well, if you want to try it with the mic, if you can hear it from there, that's fine. I don't care. You got to push that button on the rack to 1.
Put it to 1.
Yeah. All right. If there's other sections you want to play to her, that's fine. Just, I don't. Yeah, well, yeah, we'll turn it down a little bit. But. Yeah. Oh, now if you have the USB, if you have it on the hard drive, then you can plug the hard drive into the other computer.
I had it pulled up to the.
Right. Yeah, I get it. I know. Yeah.
Hi, this is Jennifer returning your call.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. I sincerely appreciate it. And I'm sorry,
Yeah, no
I wasn't sure if I was.
Let's see, 4th?
That's the part we're going to talk about.
Well, yeah.
That's the part she didn't remember.
Don't wake up might be probably the best place to start.
It's 9 or 10. About 9 or 10. Chris was up around 9, I would say, possibly earlier, but I didn't wake up.
Okay, now in her original testimony with the prosecution, Jenna specifically stated that she was up somewhere around 8 or 9. She now says 9 or 10. And she claims that Chris definitely woke up earlier than she did.
Till 9 or 10, and he walked up to go watch the Peachtree road race because we live right around the corner, down the street from it. And he text messaged me to bring Addie, so I got up, walked the dog with her, walked her up there, and then I came back. And hold on, let me read through here. Okay.
That's it.
All right, is there anything else you're going to want to talk to her about
That's it.
on there? Anything the state's going to want to ask her about that you want to refresh her memory with?
I don't think so, Judge.
All right. Oh, yeah, well, now ask her if that. See, now you got to ask her if it refreshes her memory.
Well, we can do that.
Well, let's do it here first before.
Does that refresh your memory?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Then I can ask her in front of her.
Okay. All right, bring them back in. Did anyone go cover the rally and see Miss Roberts in the park? No one did double duty for. Okay, one of you did. Okay.
John was over there, sure.
There was they opened the Democrat Party headquarters, and so they had her and Stacey Abrams and some other notables in the park.
I think she's from Smyrna. Mystic Pizza. Another great one.
All right, Mr. Weaver, go ahead.
Mr. Polanski, we refreshed your memory with a recording that you had with Detective Kuykendall back in July of 2018 on this break. And now I'm going to ask you the question again. Do you remember that Chris was already out at the Peachtree Road race and that you and Addie came out about 9 or 10? He texted you to come out to the race. So that means he was alone from bedtime all the way up to 9 or 10.
He was at our condo.
Well, he was also at the race. Do you know what time he went to the race?
Probably around 8, I would guess.
But you don't know.
I don't know exactly.
Because you slept in, yes?
Correct.
All right, so you don't know when he left that apartment that morning.
He texted me when he did.
He texted you to come out.
Okay, I felt that last little part was kind of important. That was why I restarted it for a minute. So, I don't know about you guys, but to me, there is a big difference of he texted when he left to go versus texting you to go out with him. And if your ass is asleep, there is no possible way that for 100% certainty you will know when somebody leaves. You can have a rough idea. Maybe you took a gander at the clock on your phone or whatever. I have done stuff like that. And being half asleep, I don't always get the time right. So yeah. Like, I don't trust this testimony so freaking ever. Oh, and one more thing that I want to point out is in that clip that the defense played, she specifically said, "Hold on, I have to read this." What are you reading? Are you reading something that tells you exactly what happened?
He testified earlier that he was out there much earlier than 9 or 10.
he was out there earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
I really don't remember the exact timeline. So what I said on the call is probably more accurate than what I'm trying to remember 6 years ago, because I've been trying to push this out of my brain ever since the divorce was finalized. So I've been making every effort I can to forget about everything. So that's why I'm struggling to really give you an exact time when Chris got up and walked out to the Peachtree Road.
All right, again, here we go with the bullshit. So I'm going to cut through that bullshit, as usual. I'm struggling to remember because since the divorce, I have pushed everything out of my brain as much as humanly possible because I don't want to remember any of it. AKA, I'm sorry, it is more convenient to act like I don't know what the hell is going on because I really don't know what the hell is going on. I just wanted the attention because Chris promised me something for it. I don't know what Chris promised her, but I am fully believing that Chris was like, you know what, if you do something to take the suspicion off my brother and I will compensate you in some way, shape, or form. And apparently, in 2021, he also still had the substance abuse issue. So, I wonder, when did Chris enter substance abuse help? Because that's a curious one for me. But yes, so she just doesn't remember, not because since the divorce she wanted to try and push everything out of her brain, but because she didn't know anything to begin with. And that she had to sit here and be coached on her story straight from the start. And I bet that they got divorced because she didn't think that this would drag on so long before they would get their money. And I'm going to admit, had COVID not happened, they probably wouldn't have had to have waited so long for a hearing for Melody to come up, or for a trial. I mean, not just a hearing, but yes.
Grace.
And Judge, that's all I have for this witness.
Ms. Frank, anything else?
Just briefly, Judge. Jenna, did you know Gary Farris?
Yes.
Did you have the opportunity to see Chris and Gary around one another?
Yes.
And did Chris love his father?
Yes.
Would he have ever wished him to be gone?
No, never.
Did he ever express to you that he wanted his money more than his father?
No, absolutely not.
That's all I have. Thank you, Judge.
All right, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you sit down. Thank you, ma'am.
Because why would you verbalize? When you have the best of both worlds, you have daddy and daddy's money, so why would you verbalize? It makes you look like a total dick. Like, I can see this being a fairly newish feeling. I will bet you that that feeling probably started for Chris around the time that Gary told him that he stole money from Gary and that Gary was changing over all of his bank accounts and all of that. Now, if Gary actually had the opportunity to do that, I don't know. But Gary threatened it. And I will almost guarantee that that probably wasn't the first time that Gary threatened it. And I will almost bet that Chris and Scott knew that they were on thin ice and risking being cut off from Daddy's money. And at that point, when you're risking losing one or the other, what are you going to choose at that rate when Daddy has taken care of all of your bills in your entire life for your entire life? What would you choose? Daddy being around or the millions of dollars that accompany Daddy?
Ma'am,
Thank you.
call your next witness.
Oh, sorry. Philip Samples. The state calls Philip Samples.
Y'all just stressed. You're welcome to get stressed again, but I'm going to.
Before you have a seat, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, you can have a seat. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Philip Samples.
Mr. Samples, how is it that you know Scott Farris?
Met him through my wife before we got married almost 9 years ago.
What's your wife's name?
Randy Samples.
Okay, I'm going to have you scoot a little bit closer to that microphone. Thank you. Okay, and how did Randy and Scott know each other?
I believe that they met a couple years before that Randy and I got together. My wife worked at a restaurant, so they met at the restaurant and became friends from there.
What is your wife's maiden name?
Pierce.
And does she have any siblings?
She has an older brother.
What's
Ted,
his name?
Ted Pierce.
Are Scott and Ted also friends?
Correct.
And is Scott close to the Pierce family?
He is.
And that would include you now.
Absolutely.
So how long have you known him?
Met Scott roughly nine and a half years ago, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so 2015-ish?
Ish, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Sure. And were you with Scott? What kind of things would you do with Scott?
Play golf, shoot guns, bowling, campfires, normal, regular, fun stuff outside.
Where would you shoot guns?
At the farm.
What kind of guns would you shoot? Would you shoot?
Typically just shotguns, shooting at targets, stuff like that.
Did you ever know Scott to shoot a revolver?
Off the best of my knowledge, no.
So you like to play golf?
Absolutely.
And how frequently would you guys play golf?
At least 2 to 3 times a month, as much as possible.
I want to take you back 6 years to July of 2018, that week of the 4th, so Monday through Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you do for work?
I'm in construction.
And did you do that back then as well?
I did.
You had the same job?
Different jobs, same industry.
Okay. Did you have to work that week?
I did.
Did you go to work on Monday, July 2nd?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you go to work on Tuesday, July 3rd?
Partially, yes, ma'am.
Okay, what did you do on July 3rd?
July 3rd, I went to work when I was working in Houston, Georgia at the time. Worked about a half a day. Most of the crews from the job site left early that day, being that it was 4th of July early, the next day. So I left midday and headed to the lake house.
Where's the lake house?
In Dawsonville.
Whose lake house is it?
My mother-in-law's, Nancy Pierce.
So that would be Randy and Ted's mom.
Correct.
Okay. And you said that was in Dawson?
Yes, ma'am.
Dawsonville, Dawson County?
Dawson County.
Okay. On what lake?
Lake Lanier.
So you headed up there in the afternoon, early afternoon?
Early afternoon. It was after lunch.
Who was there when you got there?
My family, Nancy, Ted, Randy, Scott, and I can't remember who else, but there were people in and out.
What did you do when you were there?
Went out on the lake. We like to surf. We like to just spend time floating on the water.
And Scott was with you?
Correct.
Around what time did you leave the lake that evening?
I stayed the night that evening.
You spent the night?
Yes, ma'am.
Who spent the night with you?
It would have been my mother-in-law, Nancy, Ted, my wife, and our daughter.
And your daughter, who was how old at the time?
Not even one yet.
Did Scott spend the night?
He did not spend the night.
Okay, what time do you remember did he leave?
It was late in the evening. I don't remember the exact time, but it was very late.
So after 9?
Absolutely.
After 10?
Can't say for sure, but
After 11?
late.
Okay, so maybe after 10. Did he stay past midnight?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay. What time did you go to sleep that night?
Probably much after midnight.
Okay. But when you were awake, Scott left?
No, he was still there at the time, I believe.
Did he leave when you were awake, or did he leave after you went to bed?
I believe he left before we went to bed.
Okay. So that was the night of the 3rd.
Correct.
And did you guys have plans for the 4th?
We did.
Did you have plans with Scott?
We did.
What were those plans?
We had golf at 7 o'clock in the morning on the 4th.
Where were you going to golf?
Hampton Golf Village
Where's that?
in Cumming, Georgia.
Cumming is a big place, so
Okay.
Can you narrow it down a little bit?
Yes, it's just off of Highway 400, right next to Hubbardtown Road, Setting Down, Jotham Down area.
So east towards Hall County,
Correct.
slightly east.
Yes.
When you get off 400, you go east.
Correct.
And your tea time was
7 o'clock in the morning.
7 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Who did you go there with?
Scott and Ted.
Did you ride with Scott?
No, ma'am.
Okay, who did you ride with?
Ted.
And when you got there, what time was it?
About 6:45.
Okay. And who was there when you got there?
Scott was there.
He was already there. Did you communicate with him prior to that morning?
Just that we were heading to the golf course.
And how did you communicate with him?
Called him. Typically, if we play golf early in the morning, we all call each other and make sure we're moving.
Okay. How long does it take you to play a round of golf? 18 holes.
18 holes, average 4.5 hours.
Did you play 18 on July 4th, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were with Scott the whole morning?
Correct.
What time did you finish?
If we teed off at 7, we would have been wrapping up around 11:30.
Where did you go after you finished your round of golf?
Back to the lake house in Dawsonville.
That same lake house?
Correct.
Your mother-in-law's lake house?
Yes.
Who went?
Scott and Ted.
And you?
Correct.
Who
And
else
myself.
was there?
My wife was still there with my daughter, and can't remember if anybody else showed up off the top of my head.
What did you do when you got there?
Back onto the lake, floating, surfing, enjoying the water.
And once you were all kind of tired of the water, did you go see fireworks? What did you do that evening? Did you cook out?
On the 4th, my wife and I left around 6-ish because we had to get back to the house with our daughter, and I had to work the next day.
Who was there when you left?
Nancy, Scott, Ted, and again, I can't remember who else was there.
So throughout the time that you were with him on the 3rd at the lake, did Scott ever leave and come back?
Not to my knowledge.
On the 4th, when you were with him from golf from that morning till about 7 a.m. till when you left the lake house first around dinner time between 6 and 7, did he ever leave and come back?
Not to my knowledge.
Those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Okay. So I know that they are trying to establish, a timeline of when could Gary have died. Now, I understand that they state that, they believe that he passed away July 4th into July 5th, and that it could have been July 3rd that he actually died. So here's my thinking. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, that it really is July 3rd that he passed away. Like July 3rd into July 4th. That leaves Chris capable of being there and Scott. Sorry, I had to pause for a second because the dog was scratching at the kids' doors because the two dogs are playing with each other. So Chris and Scott both could have been there, and nobody would have known for sure. If it was the 4th into the 5th, there is still plenty of time. Sorry, I was listening for the dog. It sounded, he's got something. Hold on. All right, I apologize. Loki had gotten into a pen, telling me this dog is so affluent. But if Scott's friend left between 6 and 7, that leaves more than enough time for Scott to decide to go home and murder his dad on the 4th into the 5th. And again, nobody would really know. Like, the prosecution is offering up these witnesses in a way to try to solidify that Scott and Chris could not have done this, but all they're doing is showing even more the holes in the timeline that would have permitted one or both of them to be present for this murder.
Mr. Samples, that's correct.
Correct.
My name is John Luke Weaver, and I, along with Michael Ray, represent Melody Farris. I want to talk to you a little bit. How long have you been friends with Scott?
Roughly 9 years.
Before 2018?
Yeah, roughly. Before then, I mean, that was 6 years ago, so roughly 3+ years, just give or take.
Okay, all right. So did, in all y'all's time as friends, did Scott talk to you at all about his time in the military?
Very sporadic, but yeah.
What did he tell you?
That he spent time in Iraq. I mean,
Okay.
we didn't go into the details, stuff like that, so.
All right. Did he ever tell you that he had experience with burned bodies in Iraq?
Not to my knowledge.
Never brought that up to you? Okay. And any type of weapons that he used?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did he tell you that he'd been previously married?
I did know that, yes.
Okay. How did he tell you that?
I believe just in conversation one night, sitting down with my soon-to-be wife and Scott, just it got brought up in conversation.
And they were divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you know back then about his life? Like how he made a living? What was he doing?
He worked on the farm.
He worked on the farm? Mm-hmm. Did you think he was getting a paycheck, or how do you think he was making money?
Didn't ask. None of my business.
Okay. Were you aware that on the morning of the 4th, which is when you guys played golf, early tee time, because it's hot in summertime, you got to start early, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So y'all get there at 7, maybe even a little before, but are you aware that he had, for his round of golf, he had to use his father's credit card? Did you know that?
Did not.
Didn't see it?
I don't pay attention to what people use.
Okay. And y'all played golf. And, well, let's back up. Let's go to the third. That day, when did y'all play golf on the third?
I didn't play golf on the third.
All right. When did you run into Scott on the third?
After I got to the lake house from work.
Okay. He was already there.
Yes.
And what, if anything, what was his demeanor like that evening?
Standard Scott.
What is standard Scott?
Happy to be around his friends. Happy to be enjoying the lake.
Okay. So y'all were. How much did you see him drink that night?
Not
Couple
much.
beers.
Couple beers.
Any whiskey? Any bourbon? Crown Royal? Anything like that?
Not off my top of my knowledge, no.
No shots. You don't remember him taking any shots?
If he did, I don't remember it.
Did y'all ever do that when y'all were at the lake?
I do, yes.
Well, okay. But y'all been known to do that.
Yes.
But you did see him drinking alcohol the night of the third.
Yes.
Right. And you don't remember a specific time when he left?
I do not.
Right. The next morning when you get out to play golf with him, what was his demeanor like?
Same as we always was, happy to play golf. I mean, when we woke up to play golf and we met, we always were a little sluggish in the morning, and he was just the same as the rest of us.
So he was a little sluggish, just like you guys?
Tired.
You could tell he was tired?
No, just same as the rest of us.
Right. So, which was tired? You said sluggish.
Yeah, we're 6:45 in the morning, we're all sluggish.
And y'all went to the lake again that day.
Correct.
Did he drink?
Best of my knowledge, I don't remember.
Now, you went, you testified earlier that you guys had been out on the farm shooting. All right. Were you ever in a Facebook video with him where you guys were shooting what appeared to be an AR-15 and then you started shooting some sidearm? Was that you?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I don't recall ever shooting an AR-15 over there.
All right. When you guys were shooting, was it along the backs? What part of the property were you guys on?
Behind the barn.
Behind the barn?
Where Scott lived, yes.
All right. And did you, what would you guys do? How would y'all shoot?
Shoot at targets.
Would you do any like kind of tactical movements as you did that?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Y'all just standing there shooting targets?
Yes.
Tell me about Scott. How was he a good shot? Is he a good shot?
Average.
Wow. Okay. Explain why he's an average shot.
He didn't shoot much better than me.
All right. And you would define yourself as an average shot.
Absolutely.
And the type of guns you guys would use, what would you bring your own? Would you use Scott's?
Bring our own.
All right. What did you bring over there?
I would have brought my dad's rifle, I believe, if I remember correctly.
All right. And any handguns?
I didn't own a handgun at the time.
Did Scott?
I believe so.
And did he shoot with a handgun while y'all were there?
Possibly. I don't remember exactly what everybody was shooting.
Was there a lot of people over there shooting while you were doing this? Or just you and Scott?
No, 10 people or so.
10 people or so?
Have a campfire at night. Let's shoot and hang out, eat.
How often would y'all do that?
It was sporadic, every couple months or so, once a month, just depending on what everybody's schedules was.
And everybody back then, y'all were in y'all's mid-30s?
Yes, sir.
Because now everybody's kind of early 40s, but back then mid-30s, mid to late 30s?
Roughly.
So y'all get together every couple of months, go out to the barn, shoot, drink, have a bonfire, things like that.
We only shot once while I was there. The rest of the time it was all riding horses, campfire, cooking out, spending time with each other.
Your Honor, I may have a moment. That's all, Judge.
Redirect.
That's okay. No, Judge.
All right, you sit down. Thank you, sir. All right, call your next witness, Mr. Fergus.
Take off Scott Farris.
Oh, my lord. I would love to know why YouTube is allowing my 13-year-old to be in my chat. I have this set for not children. How my kids snuck past YouTube is beyond me. Thanks, Nina. You and I are gonna have a discussion when Mom is all done. I love you, kiddo. Um, but we are about to listen to Scott Farris. You know what? Honestly, I'm not even mad that my kid's on here. I have been trying to get her interested in court stuff and crime stuff for a while, so yes. I honestly don't feel like her knowing what is going on is truly a terrible thing, but and hey kid, if you're gonna watch my live stream, the least you can do is like it. All right. So we're about to get into the testimony of Scott Farris. And I have a lot of inconsistencies to pick apart in this one. Um, and as you guys know, I like to kind of listen through the prosecutions because they're basically building the timeline. And so I like to have the timeline and the settings set, and then I like to tear them apart on the defenses. So I have a feeling though that I'm going to stop a couple of times during Scott Farris's prosecution testimony. And there's a couple things that I may stop just so that I can write them down for future notes. But for the most part, we're gonna play straight through.
Scott, just go ahead and stand behind the chair for you so I can swear you in. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear from the evidence you're about to present in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and have a seat.
Underneath.
Scott, state your full name for the record.
Scott Walker Farris,
How old are you today?
41 years old.
And you know why you're here today?
Yes, sir, I do.
And would you identify your mother for the record, please? You see your mom sitting in court?
Yes, sir.
Just describe the clothing she's wearing.
She's wearing a gray jacket with a black shirt, glasses on her head, pearl necklace.
What I want to do is I want to go back and kind of introduce you to the jury. So let's go back and I want to talk about your childhood. If I asked you where are you from, what's your answer?
I was born in Muscle Shoals, Florence, Alabama was the hospital. Lived there short period of time, and then we moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where my dad went to law school.
Okay. Let me ask you about that. We're going to break it down and go through it. How old were you? What were your memories? What age do you remember law school with your dad?
I was very little. I remember going to law school. I remember when my dad graduated and seeing him jump over like a big mud puddle in his cap and gown. There's very, very little I remember of actually being in Tuscaloosa because I was so young.
About how old again were you when you were there?
Probably 5-ish, around in there.
And how old was your brother Chris?
Well, he's 3 years older than me, so he would have been around 8, 9 years old.
Do you remember doing anything with your dad at law school? Did y'all play together or do anything when you were there?
Don't remember any. I remember going fishing with him. There was either a pond or a lake or river close by in the townhome that we lived in.
Do you have a memory of your when your dad was in law school, of him studying or coming back and studying or anything like that? Or what are the memories that you have of your dad while he was in law school?
I don't really remember any of that. I remember more in Birmingham when I believe he was he taught law school or helped out with a law professor, and helping him grade tests. I do remember that.
How'd you do that?
Well, back then it was like, when I was in high school, when you took, SATs or anything, it was filling the bubbles, and, he would give me a kind of a cardboard cutout, and I'd lay it over, and anything that didn't have a pencil mark, I'd just take a highlighter and hit it. So that was my way of helping him out.
He was grading tests?
Oh, yeah. He was incredibly book smart.
How old were you when you were helping your dad do this?
We were living in Birmingham, so I was in elementary school, so I don't remember my exact age, but between, definitely between 5 and 10 years old, roughly.
And what were age of your siblings at this time when you were in Alabama? Or it was you and Chris?
All 4 of us would have been born, well, except for, I believe Amanda was born in Tuscaloosa, and Emily. No, sorry, Amanda was born in Birmingham. Emily was born in Tuscaloosa, I think. Emily is 5 years behind me, and then Amanda is 18 months roughly behind Emily.
All right, so let's go through the kids. Who's the oldest in the family?
Chris is.
And how much older is he than you?
5 years. No, sorry, 3 years.
3 years? And then it's you? And then who's after you, below you?
Emily.
Okay, and what's the age difference between you and Emily?
About a 5-year difference.
And then Amanda's the youngest?
Yes, sir.
Were you who you were the closest with? Were you closer to your sisters or to your brother, or who did you line up with?
I was more protective of, Emily was closer to me, so I was protective of her, but...
How about Chris? Was he closer to one of the sisters?
Chris was kind of more of on Amanda. I was Emily. Chris and I did a lot of things together as kids. We were very involved in baseball.
Sports?
Yes.
Did you play anything else besides baseball?
At the time, no.
What kind of things did you do for hobbies and things when you were young?
A lot of fishing.
And how about your sisters? What type of things would they do?
Played with Barbies.
As you've gone through this entire event, the murder of your father, is there a division among the kids now?
Chris, Emily, and I, we're all together. Amanda had turned on us.
Did things get stressful, tense after the death of your father?
Oh, yes. I mean, our whole world got wrecked.
Do you talk to your sister Amanda much anymore?
No, I do not.
How about your other siblings?
Yes, I talk to them at a minimum once a week, roughly.
Growing up, how close were you? How close were the four to each other?
I mean, as we got older, we all kind of started doing our own things. Chris, he was older than me, so, with him being in high school and all, he's not going to hang out, as much with me, the little brother. He's got his own friends and all, and, Emily and I mean, we really didn't go do things together. It was kind of a normal childhood, just brother and sister type deal.
When it comes to your dad as you're growing up through high school, did he work a lot?
Yes, he did.
Would you describe your father as was he a workaholic?
Yes, I would.
Did he love his work?
He absolutely did.
If you could describe whether or not he was an introverted or extroverted person, what was he like?
What do you mean?
Was he quiet, kind of isolated to himself, or was he the life of the party and hang out with people?
So if there was something going on, if we all went out to dinner and stuff, he definitely sparked up conversations with everybody, crack jokes and everything like that. But he didn't go out all the time. I mean, if there was only going to be two places he was going to be at, home or the office working. But whenever we went out, and like when we used to go on dove hunting trips, a dove shoot and all, he would get around and talk with people and have a good time.
Do you like to hunt?
Yes, sir, I do.
What type of things do you hunt?
Pretty much anything I can. But here in the state of Georgia, I mainly do deer hunting and dove hunting.
What type of hunting did your dad like to do?
Bird hunting.
Do you do a lot?
A lot of bird hunting, yes.
And what kind of guns would you use when you do bird hunting?
Shotguns.
Do you have a particular gun that he would like to use or anything, or y'all would use?
I mean, he's had several shotguns. He started out with 12-gauge shotgun, and then he got a over and under silver pigeon. That's when he started getting more into quail hunting with clients. But he just mainly always had shotguns.
Do you like to play golf?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did your dad like to play golf?
He did, but he didn't play as much as, say, I would.
And who would you play golf with? Who was the people that you usually would go out with?
I've gone out a couple times with my brother, but mainly my friends Philip, Ted, and Justin.
What kind of education background do you have?
Graduated high school.
Did you get any training after that?
Not besides military, no.
Yeah, we'll get into military, but outside of that, no college degrees or anything?
No, sir.
What kind of skills, though? You're very good at certain things, I think. What things are you good at?
Mechanical. I've always been working with my hands. Fixing things, repairing mowers, even washing machines and stuff like that. I've always been pretty good at diagnosing stuff and repairing it.
Are you more of a reader, or do you do something like hands-on?
More hands-on.
And what type of work are you doing now? You don't have to give us the name of any business or anything, but what type of work do you do now?
I'm a manufacturer technician.
Okay, what's that mean?
The company we work for, we package, we mix ingredients and package workout supplements like pre-workouts, protein shakes. I take care of all the equipment like conveyors, massive blenders, machines basically that puts the powder into bottles and then puts labels on them and so forth.
Who has the highest education among the kids?
That would be Emily.
And do you know what she has?
She has a degree from Alabama, and I don't really remember what her specific degree is, but I know she's like in human resources now, I think.
Smart?
Yes.
Now, I don't want to pitch your father's love against anybody, but how did your dad feel about Emily?
Oh, he loved her to death.
Did he love all you kids?
Yes, he did.
Did y'all at times disagree?
Between who?
Your dad and the kids. Y'all ever have disagreements?
Okay, so I know we haven't quite gotten to it yet, but when they come up to Emily's um, testimony, you will hear the almost jealousy in her voice when she's talking about how much money Chris and Scott got from her dad. Um, and how all her parents did was buy her a house. Um, and I don't know, it's just the dynamic of all of these kids when money gets talked about is really weird. You can feel the tension as soon as money starts becoming a topic. And it's for all of them, literally all of them. And this is what makes me really think that at least Chris has an idea of what happened. And it makes me really feel that Scott is a good portion of what happened to his father. I'm not going to say he is the end all be all. You know, Melody very well may have played a hand in this, but I feel like he was probably the person that was the fixer, the person who went out and did the actions for the family.
With your mom and dad?
Oh, yeah, everybody does.
Would you consider the relationship that you and your kids had before all this, was it pretty normal to you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I felt like I had a pretty decent, happy child life. You know, we try to do as much things as possible. We went to the beach every year. I mean, we never got to go to Disney World or anything like that, but we had our family vacations, and, you know, we always got together for birthdays and Christmas and holidays.
Would your dad give you anything you wanted?
No.
Would he limit what you could get money-wise or make you account for it? What kind of car did you have?
Which time?
As a teenager.
As a teenager, I had my first vehicle was an old 91 Silverado, regular cab, no extended cab, nothing.
Would he give you?
Poor baby. Poor baby. You had an old car as a teenager. I don't feel bad for you, dude. I really don't. My very first car was a 2007 Chevy Avalanche in 2007. But I worked as a stripper making $2,000 a night. Hell yeah, I had a brand new car, but that was my first car. I had to buy it myself. I had to work my butt off to get my car. Like, poor you. And I don't feel that any teenager should have a brand new car. All they're going to do is fuck it up anyway while they're learning to drive. Like, yeah, give that kid a beater, because then if they wreck it, you're only out like $2,000, 2,500, something like that. Like, not a whole lot of money. It's a totally different story than if you were to buy them a like 2 or 3-year-old car that's costing you, 20 to 50 grand, and then they wreck the car and you're out that much money. What? No. I don't feel bad for Scott. I don't feel bad for any of these kids.
Whatever car you wanted?
He bought my first vehicle, and he gave me a price limit. And I believe it had to be $10,000 or less.
How about with your brothers and sisters? Was he the same way?
Chris was, yes. He was pretty much the same way. They gave a price limit. Emily, he kind of flexed more on. And then Amanda, she got a brand new one.
So as it went down, it got more generous?
Yeah.
Now, when you were in Alabama, do you remember moving from there to Georgia?
Yes, sir, I do.
How old were you when that happened?
Well, I just completed elementary school, and I was going to be starting middle school here.
So is that 7th grade, or what grade is that? 8th grade?
6th grade, I would
Sixth grade.
start here.
How did you feel about coming to the Atlanta, Georgia area?
I wasn't happy. I had friends.
Do you remember the whole move as a family?
Yes, I do.
And where did y'all end up moving to? What was the first house in Alpharetta is what I refer to it as, but where was the first house?
At Hampton Hall neighborhood.
Describe this home. What was it like?
To me, I thought it was, the biggest house I've ever seen. Growing up, we either lived in a townhouse or an apartment. Our first big house was in Birmingham. Thinking back now, it's, probably no bigger than the house I live in now. But when we moved there, I thought this was, very nice house, very large.
What stands out about the house for you? What do you remember?
That I finally got my own bedroom. So I shared a bedroom with Chris up until we moved to Atlanta.
Financially, your father, was he doing better as he came from Alabama to Georgia?
Yes.
When y'all started out, he was in law school and all that. He was not making as much money as he eventually made.
I assume so, yeah. Back then I really didn't look at, how much money my dad was bringing in.
Did things get bigger, though, and more expensive, or I guess better things in some ways? Was the house a nice house, your first house in Alpharetta?
Yes, it was. I noticed my dad liked to do projects, so we were able to do a lot more projects. We did projects at the old house, too.
What do you mean by projects? What would he like to do?
Tear down a deck and build a new one. I remember doing that in the house in Birmingham and building a tree house in Birmingham. And when we moved to Atlanta, there was a lot of projects. Backyard, any yard work, just improving the house.
Now, I want to point out that he is talking about yard work. And Chris claims, up until that point, he has never seen his parents do yard work or gardening together or separately. But yet you have Chris saying that his dad loved to do yard work and work in the yard and do these hands-on projects. And so it really shows that, Melody and Gary saying, hey, we're going to be doing yard work today. We can't take the kids is probably not as big of a long shot as Chris is making it sound.
Two-story house, the first house?
Yeah, it's 3 stories if you count the basement. So you have the basement, the main floor, and then the top floor.
How about the backyard? How big is the backyard?
Where you actually used, it wasn't, if I had my back against the wall of the house, the fence would have been at the wall at the back of the courtroom. But the property extended past that, but that was woods.
Or some woods and stuff like that?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to talk later on about, but at some point did your dad set the woods on fire there?
Yes, I do remember that.
I want to go into now and talk about
Okay. So I want everybody to start kind of keeping track of all of the times that Gary caught something on fire. We are going to start with the woods at their first house in Georgia. I believe it was the one in Georgia and not the one in Alabama. Because there was also a fire that happened at the Purcell Lane home in Alpharetta where Gary ultimately had passed away. And I don't remember if they said that that was something that Gary had caused or not. But I do also specifically remember another time that he caught something outside on fire there too.
About as you got older out of high school, at some point, I guess, did you have several jobs or before you went to the military, or what were you doing before you went to the military? And what age did you go to the military?
Well, in high school, I was on work program, so I got to get out of school right after lunch. I worked for Jiffy Lube. I was taking automotive in high school. Started working there. Once after I graduated high school, I moved up to working for other mechanic shops like Tires Plus and American Service Station. Did that for quite a while, and then I just got kind of burned out on turning wrenches all the time, and I got into selling cars.
What age are we talking about here now?
Well, I've already graduated high school, so, you know, between the ages of 18 to all the way up until I joined the Army, which is I was around 23, 24 years old.
And all this time, where were you living?
So I want to use this 23, 24 as like a reference point to show that like he was plenty old enough when he got out of the military to know that if a gun or something gets stolen, you should probably report it to the police. And you should probably make it known that this got stolen and stuff like that. The reason why I bring it up is because, Chris and Emily try to, feign this whole thing of, oh, well, Scott was young and, he had just gotten out of the military and all this stuff. And by the time Chris even went into the military, he had a fully developed frontal lobe. So he should have had better decision-making skills than what he shows and demonstrates. He demonstrates that he is significantly impulsive throughout a lot of this. Getting married on a whim and things like that. It's just, you can start to see some of the impulsive decisions that Scott tends to make, which really shows that, something like killing your father because you're going to be potentially cut off is not outside of the realm of impulsive choices that he could have made.
Living
At my parents' house. I moved out for a while, lived with some friends, and made bad decisions and, partying too much and all, and wound up moving back home. And then that's when I started getting into selling cars.
So you were in your 20s drinking, partying a little bit?
Yeah, I was being your typical...
Sure. And then at some point you decided to go into the military?
Yes, sir.
And which branch did you go into?
I went into the Army.
And when you went into the Army, do you remember how old you were and what was going on at that time?
So when I joined, I started joining around 2007. It took me a little while to actually join because I had to lose some weight to be able to get in. But I remember, after I graduated basic, I turned 25 years old. So.
Where'd you get? You were in the Army, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Where'd you go to basic at?
Fort Benning.
And what do you remember about that experience?
Most challenging thing I ever put myself through.
Are you proud that you did that?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do in the Army?
Infantry.
And what does that mean? Tell us, if we don't know what that means, what does that mean?
If anybody's ever joined the military, especially the Army, we're called 11 Bang Bang, bullet catchers.
All right, say that one more time for me.
We're called 11 Bang Bangs, bullet catchers.
Okay.
I fought on the front line.
And at some point, did you have to be deployed and go overseas?
Yes, sir. I went to Iraq.
And I'm not going to ask you too much about it, but you may be asking questions. But what I want to know is, what year was that you went over?
I went in 2009. I want to say it was April.
How was your relationship with your mother, the defendant, this time?
Pretty much, normal to me. We got in arguments and, got in arguments, had our good days, had our bad days.
Could you describe it as a typical relationship with your mother?
Yeah, nothing really stood out of the normal. The only thing, I definitely remember the day that I told my parents I was joining the Army. When I told her, she just flat out said, "You can't do it." And then when I told my dad, he was like, "You need to become a sniper."
That's what your dad said?
That's what my dad said.
Was he proud of you?
Oh, yes. He was a history buff, and biggest history he liked was war history. So I do remember him telling me that he planned on joining the Air Force prior to my brother becoming pregnant with my brother.
What do you want to do in the Air Force?
That I don't remember.
But it was the Air Force?
Yes, sir. My grandfather, his dad, was in the Air Force.
Now, when you had to fly, I guess, and go overseas, you probably went to an airport or something like that. Did your mom come see you off?
Yes, she did.
And did your dad?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember that moment?
Yes, sir.
And how was she with you at that time? Was she proud of you when she sent you off?
Oh, yes.
What were her emotions like then when you were going off?
She was crying.
Now, I'm going to talk about this. Something I don't talk about very often. But I, at one point, was dating a guy who was in the Marine Corps. And he had an option at one point to rejoin the military, in the Marines, keep his corporal status and all of that. Or stay out of the military. And while I was supportive because I knew that he missed being in the Marines, I was terrified because they were still sending people over to Iraq and things like that. And I know that I felt some sort of anger when he even first brought it up. And I am sure to some extent that Melody's reaction that he wouldn't be able to do it was anger at the fact of this was the state of the world at the time. And when I was with my ex that was in the military, that was between 2006 and 2009. And so that was right about the same time that Chris was in, or not Chris, Scott was in the military. So I understand 100% what the political climate was at that time and what was going on in the world at that time. And my ex had already lost a friend while that friend was serving over in Iraq. And so it already had a huge impact on us and on our relationship and on the way that I perceived being in the military during a time like this, where there is conflict going on and war. And I fully understand where some of that initial shortness may have come from, because I very much had that in the beginning with my ex that was in the military. And, you know, there was never a day that went by, though, that I wasn't very proud of him for the sacrifices that he made, just like my husband. My husband is also a veteran, and there is not a day that goes by that I am not so proud of him for the sacrifices that he made while he was in the military. And like my bio dad was in the military, and even my ex's mother, even though her and I do not get along, I am very appreciative of the sacrifices that she made while she was in the military. Um, and that goes for any service member. Honestly, if you are or were in the military, please know that you guys have such a staunch supporter in me. I am sorry for the conditions of the current military. I am sorry for the basic lack of, humanity that the older military people had received. Um, but I am so grateful for everybody's sacrifices, current and past sacrifices. Um, and, the members of the military really hold a place in my heart, and I greatly appreciate every single one of you. So thank you. But I do also understand how difficult it can be on the families of those military members, because it's never something that you want to see, is potentially losing your loved one to war or conflict or anything like that.
Acted like, a mother would be.
How about your dad?
That was the second time I've ever seen my dad cry.
There's some tissue back there, Scott, if you need it.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. There's some tissue right behind you there if you need some.
No. But yeah, I remember it very well. They both dropped me off at the Atlanta airport. I left the Atlanta airport and went back out to Fort Bliss, El Paso, Texas.
What year was that you went over?
2009.
And how long were you overseas?
just shy of the 1 year mark. I believe it was 10 and a half months I was over there.
Did you see some hard things while you were there?
Yes, sir.
When you came back home, did you get out of the military? When you came back home, were you still in the military for a while?
From
being overseas?
Iraq?
Uh-huh.
No, I actually re-enlisted while I was over in Iraq. And at the time, they gave out options. You could either go to, say, Ranger School or Airborne School, or you could choose duty station. I chose to go the route of choosing duty station, so I selected to go to Fort Benning, which I got stationed with 3rd ID.
And how long, when you came back, did you stay in the military?
I was released, my official last date was in 2013.
2013. Do you remember, was that before moving to the Purcell Lane property?
Yes, sir.
And when you're in the military, infantry, they teach you how to shoot?
Yes, sir, they
Teach you how
did.
to shoot rifles?
Yes, sir.
What type of rifles did you carry when you were in the military?
The M4.
And teach you how to shoot pistols?
Very, very seldom.
You didn't get a pistol as a sidearm as an infantry?
No, sir.
Mainly just...
Okay, so one thing that I'm going to be trying to see if I can find is his actual discharge. Because for 2 years after you get out of the military, you are what they consider inactive duty. So I want to see if that 2013 date is the official end or if it is his inactive duty start date. Because for those 2 years, he would still have to be doing at least one, possibly two musters just in case they need to be called back. And they kind of whip your ass into shape just in case they need to call you back into the military, because then you're considered like a reserve unit. And so if they activate the military reserves, then you will then be called up. So they kind of try to keep you into shape over the course of that 2 years, just in case they need to recall you. And so I'm wondering if that 2013 is the date that he went on inactive reserves or if that is the official end date. Now, the date that shows on like your certificates and things like that, for honorable and dishonorable discharge is what they consider your military contract end date. And that's very much what the 2013 could be, and that would be before the end of his inactive reserve time. So then he would technically have officially been out of the military in 2015. Which then, the reason why I'm using this to show is because that then puts him 2 years closer to when his father was murdered before he stopped having any official like military anything, and they do practice like rifle shooting and things like that when they have these musters. So, to me, it kind of shows that he would still have some muscle reactivity, some muscle memory based around his time in the military. if he still had that inactive duty until 2015. Um, and it would be less muscle memory if he ended his, you know, um, inactive reserve duty in 2013. Like, I feel like he would be a better shot and things like that with that additional 2 years of inactive duty. Um, and I feel like it again makes him a more likely candidate um, if he ended those inactive reserve times in 2015.
The M4?
So in the military, in the Army, the only people who had pistols were officers and MPs. But the rest of us, we had either M4s or you were a assault gunner, which that's what I was on that deployment. Assault gunners, it was a machine gun that I was able to carry around with me all the time.
Does that have anything to do with your size?
Possibly. I mean, they weren't going to give
someone my size that gun?
I mean, you could carry it around. You wouldn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy carrying that gun around with me all the time.
How big are you?
Currently, I'm 6'6", about 285 pounds.
And what size was your dad?
I outgrew him and my brother by 1 or 2 inches, and my dad was anywhere from, I'd say, 290 to 300 pounds.
So at the time of his death, around 300?
Yes, sir.
Was he a little bit short, just a little bit shorter than you?
Yes.
And when you were in the military and you got the training that you received, at some point did you just decide to get out and go do something else?
No, sir. I actually was let go from the military for reduction of force. It was during the Obama administration, and they basically kind of did a lottery system. If you join between a certain time and you've done so many days of service, that's how you were selected. So on my DD-214, it says reason of separation is reduction in force.
Okay. Now, let's talk about this secret marriage of yours. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
All right. Look at the jury and tell them about this secret marriage that you had and what was going on. Who was it with and what was going on?
So it was with Gina. We both in process at Fort Bliss together. She was in the military as well. She did financing. We both got to Fort Bliss at the same time, and we met during the in-processing, which took several weeks. And we all had a group of friends hanging out, and we eventually started dating. I deployed, she didn't, and, she was my girlfriend, and I was, in love and scared and just had a lot of different emotions.
Where'd y'all meet?
Where we meet?
Yeah.
In El Paso, Texas.
You're working together, the same thing, or not really?
Well, we didn't work together.
How did y'all meet is what I'm asking.
During the in-processing, we wound up ending up sitting next to each other, and then pretty much all the group of people that, we were sitting around, we all became friends and hung out all the time.
How long did y'all date?
We were together until after, till all the way until I moved to Fort Benning. But going back on, to us getting married, we talked about when I came home on R&R from Iraq, she came to Georgia to be with me, and, we talked about getting married and all. I never got down on one knee and proposed to her, anything, but at the time of the wars, 2 states did a proxy marriage. You had a single proxy, I believe, state of Texas, and then a double proxy in the state of Montana. So basically all you had to do was just fill out paperwork, get it notarized, pay the fees, mail it off, and you were legally married. So we went ahead and did that. But the plan was I was gonna come back and we were gonna move to Fort Benning together and actually do it the right way, have a wedding and, tell everybody. But things didn't work out once we were together for quite a period of time and decided to split ways.
So how long were y'all actually together? How much time were y'all together, whether dating and married?
Besides deployments, man, it was several years.
Did y'all live together?
We did live together out in El Paso when I got back from Iraq. We lived in an apartment for about 4 or 5 months.
Did you hide her from your family?
No.
Did you bring her around your family?
As much as I could. I mean, we lived out in Texas, so...
Did they ever lay eyes on her and see her?
Oh, yes, sir. She actually wound up getting out of the Army before I did, and she moved back here to Georgia because she was originally from Rome, Georgia, where she lived with her family, and she used to go and have dinner with my dad while I was deployed.
Did they like her?
Oh, yes. I mean...
Here's a million-dollar question. Why didn't you tell your family you were married?
It was kind of a thing that, I'm kind of old school in a way. Kind of like my dad. I mean, I've wanted to do the whole ask her father's hand in marriage, but he lived in Colombia, so couldn't
Columbia,
really do
South
that.
Carolina?
No, Colombia, South America. So
So you mean to tell me that you couldn't pick up the phone and call and be like, hey, can I have your daughter's hand in marriage that day? It seems like just an excuse. Oh, I didn't tell my family because I wanted to do it the right way, and I couldn't do it the right way because I couldn't pick up a telephone. And so I just got to tell my family that me and Gina were married. And what I find really funny is the way that Chris and Jenna have made this sound so far. They have made the marriage sound like Scott totally and completely hid not only the marriage, but the chick from his family. So which is it, Scott? Was she going and having lunch with your family and close to your family? Or did nobody actually know who this girl was or anything?
I've met her brothers before, but didn't get to meet a lot of her family. But she met all my brothers and my brother and my sisters, my mom and my dad.
Well, did y'all divorce or separate because of something bad, or it just didn't work out?
It didn't work. She wanted it. I didn't, because I loved her. But I wasn't her first or her last marriage, put it that way. So we were just young, and I was just going through a crazy time. I mean, I was being deployed to Iraq. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to come back.
When did you end up telling your family about the marriage?
After all this happened, and we were sitting in the law office, and
Manny
Aurora's, and he said, if there's anything that needs to be told that could come out of this, it needs to be told now. And that was the only thing that I was like, oh crap, I might as well tell them. I mean, we were already divorced, and I didn't know how extensive it was going to become.
Sure.
So
did you tell Amanda too? Did she know?
They were all in the room.
Chris, Emily, and Amanda?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you some questions about what your dad was like.
Here is again my question. If she met his brother and his sisters, why did Chris act like he had no idea who this woman even was?
You said he's smart. When you say smart, how smart was your dad?
Very. In my eyes, he was the smartest man I knew.
In what ways did he show that?
Oh, growing up, he always, was grabbing our books from school and reading stuff, and he always loved watching Jeopardy and, constantly watching that, and he just, Alex Trebek will ask a question, boom, he'll give out the answer. I mean, put it this way, my dad was so smart, he talked in his sleep. And if you caught him talking in his sleep, you give him a math problem, and I'm not saying 2 + 2, like something big, he'll give you the right answer in his sleep.
How did he do in law school?
If I remember right, he was top of his class. He was either number 1 or number 2. I kind of want to say number 2 because I do kind of remember him being ticked off that he didn't get the number 1 spot.
When it came to his work ethic, what was that like?
He worked a lot. He loved his job. He was very good at what he did. If he wasn't doing law, he was working around the house.
When he was doing his legal work, would he take a lot of vacations, or is he one of those guys that would just work a lot?
He would work a lot. The only time that we took vacations is when he had to do law seminars down. It originally started off in Gulf Shores, and then eventually it moved over to Sandestin area. That's how we did our vacations.
So he would go get training at a very nice resort or something. Y'all would go with him?
Yes, sir.
Did you enjoy those?
Oh, yes.
Whole family go?
Every year we had to do it.
He had to get his continuing legal education hours in? Did he go do that?
Yes, that's what I presume it was.
Would he be checking his... Now, I know you said your dad is very smart, but when it comes to... When you talk to your dad, or the kids would talk with your dad, when they talk with Gary, would it be odd for them to text or email him to have a conversation or solve a problem with him? I mean, is he somebody that communicated by email or text message with the family?
Both. Before really texting became a thing, it was, email. So that's how he would communicate with me when I was over in Iraq, or when I lived in El Paso, Texas. He would send me emails.
You remember his email address?
I want to say it was gferris@bird.com, I think it was, something along those lines.
What about your dad's wit? Could he cuss you with his wit? Was he quick-witted? If you did something, would he say something? What was his personality like when he would have banter or debate with you or anything like that?
I mean, he would have responded fairly quickly and all, but not aggressively.
Well, I'm not saying that. Was he sarcastic? Was he straightforward? What was his personality like? Was he a joke?
He always cracked up jokes. I mean, to me, they were corny, but, he always cracked up jokes.
When it came to the things that he really liked, how much did he like Mountain Dew and cigarettes?
2 things about my dad. He always had a cigarette in his hand, and he always had a Mountain Dew in his hand.
How much do you think he would smoke a day?
He was a pretty heavy smoker.
Did you ever get on him and tell him to quit smoking?
Oh, yes.
What did he say?
Oh, I'm going to, I'll quit one day. That was always his, response to it.
How about the Mountain Dew?
Yeah, you didn't take those Mountain Dews away from him. It was like water to him. He didn't drink alcohol. He occasionally drank coffee, but no, 99% of the time was the Mountain Dew.
And your mom, how did she feel about him smoking and drinking Mountain Dew?
She didn't enjoy it. I know more of the smoking she didn't like. Mountain Dews, I know as he got older and the health got worse, she tried to start buying caffeine-free Mountain Dews, and he wasn't a fan of them. So
where would he keep the Mountain Dew?
In the garage freezer.
Now, just so we are aware, if you have too much caffeine, it can cause a lot of the symptoms that Gary Farris was having. So, according to Google, it says the symptoms of too much caffeine include cardiovascular, increased heart rate, heart palpitations, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, and trouble breathing. Gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, indigestion, and upset stomach. It can also cause mental problems such as anxiety, irritability, restlessness, nervousness, and confusion. Sleep problems such as insomnia and sleep disruptions. And under other, it says dizziness, headache, frequent urination, dehydration, muscle tremors, trembling hands. Symptoms of a caffeine overdose are the most intense in the first 20 to 48 hours, but can last up to a week. In severe cases, a caffeine overdose can lead to convulsions, an irregular heartbeat, or even death. How much caffeine is too much depends on the individual, as some people are more sensitive to caffeine than others. People who don't regularly drink caffeine are more likely to be sensitive to its effects. So, just wanted to make sure that we are clear. Caffeine is possibly unsafe when used for a long time or in doses of over 400 milligrams a day. Caffeine can cause insomnia, nervousness, restlessness, nausea, increased heart rate, and other side effects. Larger doses might cause headache, anxiety, and chest pain. Now I understand that that is Google, and so we need to, take it with a grain of salt, but if you just Google it, it'll even take you to an FDA website about too much caffeine and how much is actually too much. I figured I would just stop, toss that in there, and give you guys a very valid reason as to why Gary may have been feeling sick.
Refrigerator.
Now, is it true that he wouldn't even go to ball games anymore because they wouldn't let you smoke and things like that? I guess didn't enjoy going out because of couldn't smoke at certain places, or?
No, I wouldn't really say that. I mean, he still went. I mean, we went before he passed. We went to SEC championship. I believe it was the year prior.
And who went with you to that?
It was my dad and I, Chad and Chris.
When you say Chad, I know who you're saying. Who is Chad?
Chad is Amanda's now husband.
Chad Bruce.
Yes.
And I think he started dating your sister Amanda. Is that how he came into the family?
Yes, man. At that time that we went to the SEC championship, he was dating Amanda.
At the time of your dad's death, would you say he had a lot of friends he would hang out with, or was he more close at home and homebody?
My dad was a homebody.
Fully charged battery, fully charged. Unplugged charger.
This must be the time. Judge, I was about to ask you, can we take a break?
Let's get a little bit.
Okay.
All kind of close to there we go.
Would he have, to your knowledge, would he have friends though? Or is he more just kind of around the family?
He was more around the family. Every once in a while he will go skeet shooting. I don't know if they were with clients or work friends, I would say. I mean, I really don't, he wasn't friends with like the neighbor down the road and go play golf with him. It was always either somebody from the law firm or somebody he's done work for.
When he would get home at night, he'd get out of the car. Would he go look at the pasture, just walk out there, have a cigarette, or what was he like when he got back?
So my dad was very routine. You can read him like a book. He always, depending on traffic, there was a certain time frame he would always come home, and he would immediately come in, pull into the garage, grab a Mountain Dew, and go change clothes. And once he changed clothes, it varied. He could have gone, he would have either gone up to the, sat in the driveway and looked around and had a cigarette and stuff, or he would go straight down to the office and start working.
Now, the type of law practice that your father did, was it corporate law?
Yes, sir.
He wasn't doing divorce law?
No, sir.
He wasn't doing criminal defense law?
No, sir.
He wasn't doing anything, I don't want to say exciting. He wasn't doing anything dangerous?
No.
He worked in an office in Atlanta?
Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, did your dad have any enemies whatsoever at the time of his death?
No.
Did you ever see anybody that had a beef with him or a problem with him or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Did you even see around the time of his death that anybody outside the family that he had even disagreements or arguments with, or any something like a road rage or something like that?
No.
Could you think of anybody outside your family that wanted to do your father harm?
No.
Did he have concerns about someone doing harm to him that you saw at that time?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Your dad's health, he would have some things called spells. Tell the jury what that was.
So, best way I can describe it was he would get very weak. He talked very thick tongue, like his tongue was swollen up, and some people would think he was drunk the way he kind of slurred, but he just got very exhausted and wanted to go lay down. And when he would have them, that's what he did. He would go and lay down, either on the couch or go lay in bed, and he would sleep for a couple hours.
When did these spells start occurring?
I think they kind of started possibly at the old house in Alfred and Hampton Hall, but they got more prominent after we moved to the farm. They just started occurring more and more and more.
Now, is this, when he would have these spells, is it any sign that it was coming on, or were it just all of a sudden just started happening?
We talked about it, and he said, yeah, he could kind of feel, the first thing that he would notice is he'll feel, really tired, like he wanted to go lay down and take a nap. So once he started feeling that, that's when his speech started getting slurry, like he had a real thick tongue. And once that happened, that's when he would just go and lay down.
And when he would lay down, did he miss work because of these spells or anything that you know of?
Well, you mean, yeah, he was sleeping, but
how the frequency, how often would these spells come on and how long would they last is what I'm trying to get at.
He'll have, it'll happen like one day a week. I really don't remember him having like one or two spells a week. So he'll have about, he'll have one day during the week, and then 2 or 3 weeks down the road, he'll have another one. Was it to a degree that it dramatically interrupted his life and things he was doing? Or was it not that? I remember one time we were working on the farm. I think it was when we were building the fence, and he said, I feel like I got a spell coming on. And he will go and sit on the RV.
Now, I just want to reiterate, those spells could very well be from caffeine use. We just read off all the fun that caffeine can cause. So, definite potential for caffeine use.
TV, and I'll just kind of look over there and check on them. And I remember that day, I was like, are you feeling all right? And he was like, yeah, I need to go lay down. I'm like, okay. I was like, I'll, come over there and check on you. Outside of that, did he, I think you told law enforcement he didn't even have kidney stones or anything like that.
Is there anything else about his health that you saw that was an issue at the time, around the time of his death?
I know, well, before his death, there was one night, Melody called me up and said, "Get over to the house. Your father's acting very strange." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "He's seeing like I think she said like seeing palm trees and stuff like that. He's just talking weird." And so I immediately jumped off my couch and left the barn and went over to the house. And yeah, I've never seen my father like that. He was kind of talking like a child would. And we wound up taking his blood pressure, and she bought a blood sugar thing, whatever. She pricked his finger and tested that. I don't remember what it came back as the reading, but I called a friend that was a nurse and asked her, what should we do? And when I told her the reading, she was like, "Get him to emergency room now." And we took him to the emergency room.
When was that?
I don't remember the exact date, but it was definitely within a year prior to his death. So.
Okay, so depending on what that blood glucose meter read, his blood sugar could have been high or low. And guess what? That can also account for the symptoms. Let's see. High blood sugar symptoms. Okay. So, we'll select Cleveland Clinic because Google doesn't give me a nice little overview of this one. So we'll skip down to symptoms. All right, here we go. What are the symptoms of hyperglycemia? So hyper is too much blood sugar, and it can be increased thirst and or hunger, frequent urination, headache, blurred vision, symptoms of long-term hyperglycemia, fatigue, weight loss, vaginal infections, skin infections, slow healing cuts and sores. Then what could happen is you could have symptoms of what they call ketoacidosis. And that could include nausea, vomiting, dehydration, abdominal pain, fruity smelling breath, deep labored breathing or hyperventilation, rapid heartbeat, confusion, disorientation, and loss of consciousness. Let's see what hypo, which is too much blood sugar. Low blood sugar. All right, so we will go to the Mayo Clinic for this one. Because again, I am missing a nice, neat overview. So being hypoglycemic, which is too little blood sugar, could be that you are looking pale, that you are having shakiness, that you are sweating, headache, hunger, or nausea, an irregular or fast heartbeat, fatigue, irritability or anxiety, difficulty concentrating, dizziness or lightheadedness, tingling or numbness of the lips or cheeks. Additional signs as the hypoglycemia worsens could be confusion, unusual behavior, or both, such as inability to complete routine tasks, loss of coordination, slurred speech, blurry vision, or tunnel vision, nightmares if asleep. Severe hypoglycemia could cause unresponsiveness, loss of consciousness, and seizures. So, yes. Seek medical help immediately if you have what might be hypoglycemia symptoms and you don't have diabetes, you have diabetes and hypoglycemia isn't responding to treatment such as drinking juice or regular not diet soft drinks, eating candy, or taking glucose tablets. So that's what it says. And it seems like, and again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't diagnose anything, but from the explanation of the symptoms, seems like Gary could have been experiencing hypoglycemia, which would be the lower end of the blood sugar. But we are going to stop there since they're just talking about like the hypoglycemia and the hyperglycemia and the, you know, blood issues. I'm going to finish up some laundry tonight, get the kids ready for a visit tomorrow with my app, and depending on how the day goes tomorrow, I may stream some more, and hopefully we can finish out day 4 tomorrow. Thank you so much for everybody who hopped in. I appreciate you all, and I hope that you have a great rest of your Saturday.